Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Christine Romans. I'm in for Savannah today. All right, let's begin this morning with this direct hit in Iowa of these storms. Another round of severe weather threatening a large section of the country.
Today, 44 million people from central Texas to upstate New York are at risk of storms. Now, this deadly outbreak of tornadoes we've seen in recent weeks continued Tuesday with 20 reports of tornadoes in Iowa, as well as one in Wisconsin. This is a look at the scale of destruction left behind in the hard-hit town of Greenfield. It's 40 miles southwest of Des Moines. A suspected tornado tore through the town and surrounding places. Officials there say the storm caused multiple deaths and injuries. A weather-related death was also reported in nearby Adams County. The storms ripped apart neighborhoods all across the state, leaving behind a wide path of destruction. On top of that, heavy rains closed roads, stranded vehicles, and flooded fields. NBC News meteorologist Angie Lastman will tell us how long this severe weather is expected to last and where it's headed next. We'll get to her in a moment. But first, we begin with NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa. She is in Greenfield with a look at the damage there.
Hey, good morning from Greenfield, Iowa. The state's governor here declaring a state of emergency in 15 counties, this being one of them. And when you see the destruction, I mean, it's easy to understand why. Like, homes decimated, these two cars completely destroyed, one flipped over. And you can see behind these homes back there, there's that emergency sign. That appears to be a hospital. So it gives you an idea of the area we're in. And then we walk this way, look down the street. I mean, this is multiple blocks of complete and utter destruction. Basically, an entire neighborhood in this city is gone. And again, this was a widespread storm. 18 reported tornadoes across the state of Iowa. We had more in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And here in Iowa, authorities confirming multiple deaths and multiple injuries. Well, across the street here, you can see this car wash destroyed, this tree torn to shreds. I mean, again, the list just goes on. Back there, that roof is completely ripped off. We also saw stunning destruction southwest of Des Moines on a wind farm. I want to show you the video of a wind turbine that caught fire after a tornado ripped through. Again, it just completely crumpled and went up in flames. So absolutely incredible damage. But again, we know this is just the latest round of severe storms in what's been an incredibly volatile spring. The numbers confirming that. Last month, April, we saw close to 400 tornadoes nationwide. That is actually twice the national average. And it seems like the destruction is just continuing. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much.
And the threat of severe weather continues today. Let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
Angie Lastman's here with more on the threat. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. We see that big batch of thunderstorms that was working through into the overnight periods across the Great Lakes. That's out of here. Now we turn our attention to what we're going to gear up for later this afternoon. We've got a couple of thunderstorms happening across a couple of spots, the Plains, the Ohio Valley. That's about it this morning. But as we get into the afternoon, things will really start to erupt along and ahead of this cold front that's been quickly working its way to the east. That's what we're going to see through the day today. We'll also see on top of that flash flood potential, the chance for some of those stronger storms. So let's start with those strong storms. It's quite expansive. It goes from parts of New York all the way south into Texas. You can see the bullseye area that we're really watching for the greatest chance to see some of the most destructive weather. That's going to be across parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. Dallas right in the middle of that. This is likely going to be a situation where we deal with the hail, the winds, and potentially some tornadoes. So all three impacts are going to be on the board for us today. That tennis ball size hail is one of the biggest concerns that we have. And you can see, again, that's stretching from Little Rock, including Dallas, and out towards San Angelo. This is something that happens this afternoon and into this evening. So be prepared to have a way to get those alerts once again as we get through the rest of your day today. Looking ahead to tomorrow, some storms will start to pop up across parts of the Northeast. We'll see some severe risk across parts of the Plains once again. You can see Little Rock, Dallas, Wichita, Kearney, all included in that here as we get into tomorrow. So a couple more days of this on the table for us. On top of the strong storms, I mentioned the flood concern that we had. The flash flooding for Little Rock, Dallas, Waco. The potential is there for us today as we gear up for some really heavy rain, potentially picking up 1 inch to 2 inches and maybe even isolated amounts up to 3 inches here as we get through the next couple of days. Looking ahead to your weekend, wet across parts of the Great Lakes, stretching through the Midwest and down through parts of the Mid-Atlantic. Warm warm out west and in the southern plains where the heat is really going to be on for Texas. We look ahead to Saturday, still damp across the east. Nice conditions for the middle of the country. They deserve it. We'll see the sunny skies lasting for Sunday out west and more of those storms sticking with us, guys, unfortunately, for a soggy forecast for Memorial Day weekend across the south. If you're looking for sunshine, though, out west, plenty of that.
All right, Angie Lessman, thank you so much for that. I called my parents last night, and the sirens were going in their house in Iowa, so sirens all over the Midwest for tornadoes last night.
Yeah, it was something that folks are used to there,
Yeah.
and they kind of know what to do, but still scary scenes
Yep.
out there. All right. Closing arguments now set to take place next week, just after the Memorial Day holiday in the hush money trial of former President Donald Trump.
Trump's legal team rested its case yesterday. The former president never took the stand, and his lawyers only called 2 witnesses. After testimony ended, the judge held a hearing with lawyers from both sides about what should be included in jury instructions. Mr. Trump addressed reporters after court adjourned for the day, criticizing Judge Juan Merchan and not mentioning why he didn't take the stand.
For the latest, we're joined now by NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen, NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Good morning to both of you. John, let's start with you. So the defense's key witness is Robert Costello. He returned to the stand after that contentious back and forth with the judge on Monday. In his testimony yesterday, Costello came under fire for how he characterized his relationship with former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. Prosecutors tried to use his own words against him. Walk us through what happened in court.
Sure. I mean, the basic thing here is Costello was trying to represent himself as Michael Cohen's attorney, as the person representing Michael Cohen following the FBI raid of Cohen's offices and home back in 2018. And yet what ended up happening is that the prosecutors were able to basically paint Costello as somebody who was trying to become Michael Cohen's lawyer, but was unable to because Cohen did not trust him, thought that he was an agent of Donald Trump. And in fact, they were able to present evidence of an email from Costello to his law partner in which he said that what they were trying to do was get Michael Cohen back on Trump's side, or on the right page, as he put it, without giving the appearance that they were working on behalf of President Trump and Rudy Giuliani, leaving the suggestion, at least, that they were trying to turn Michael Cohen back.
Danny, the former president did not testify at this trial, although he had suggested in the past that he would tell his story, but he did not. The defense called 2 witnesses. This seemed to be the defense seemed to be to poke holes in Michael Cohen's credibility. How'd they do?
Well, if it was just to poke holes in Michael Cohen's credibility, that was already done through cross-examination. And I get the strategy of calling Robert Costello because there was a moment where he said that Cohen said to him, "I've got nothing on Trump." Now, that could be something the jury would seize upon. But on the whole, the defense has no burden. And the challenge is when you start calling just a couple witnesses, you give the jury the impression that you have something to prove as well, which you don't. And when you get to closing arguments, sometimes that can be your best argument, even if you don't have an alternative theory, is just to say the prosecution didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And with Cohen, you already had baked in that he's a guy with credibility issues. So it was a risk to call Costello, who by many accounts was an unmitigated disaster.
John, let's switch gears here, talk about Mr. Trump's Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. That's the one based in Florida. Believe it or not, that trial was originally supposed to start this week. Obviously, it's been delayed indefinitely, but still there are 2 hearings planned for today. The judge is going to hear motions to dismiss this case. So what can we expect there?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get these arguments from Walt Nauta, the valet to Donald Trump, often by his side even to this day, who wants to have the case dismissed on the idea that it's basically a vindictive prosecution. And then Donald Trump has some technical issues that he's raised that he wants to see the case dismissed as a result of that. Of course, anytime there is a motion to dismiss the case, the judge has an opportunity to do that. What we've seen in the last 24 hours or so is a lot more information about sort of why some of the evidence was collected, and basically some unsealed filings have shown that a judge in Washington, D.C. was befuddled at how Donald Trump could have had classified documents in his bedroom and not known it. So, it's hard to predict what the judge is going to do. I would just say for viewers, until until this case moves forward in any real way, you can expect that it's not going to move forward before the election in any real way.
In a completely different legal drama for the former president, Danny, 11 former allies of Trump have pleaded not guilty in Arizona's fake electors case here, including Rudy Giuliani, the former lawyer of the former president. Bring us up to speed on this case and what's at stake.
Yeah, we're only at the indictment and arraignment phase, so it's at the very inception of this case. But this case has a lot of parallels to the Georgia election interference case. Some of the same defendants appear as well. And so it's going to be a lot of the same allegations. And I expect a primary defense is going to be one rooted in the First Amendment. We've seen a lot of B-roll of some of these defendants sitting around the table, filming themselves as they're engaged in what appears to be some of the charges in the indictment. And I expect that they're going to use that as kind of a judo move to say, look, as much as this looks like video of us committing a crime, we so believed in what we were doing that we were perfectly happy to have video of us doing it. Their entire thrust of their argument is going to be they were engaging in the democratic process of elections. And whether or not it works remains to be seen.
All right, Danny and John, thank you both. Appreciate it.
All right, two key figures at the center of the Georgia election interference case against Donald Trump have both won their primary elections. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, who brought the racketeering case against the former president, won the Democratic primary in her re-election bid.
Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, who's presiding over the Trump case, also came on top in his nonpartisan race. Fani Willis admitted to having a romantic relationship with the special prosecutor she brought on in the interference case. Judge McAfee ultimately ruled the relationship did not create a conflict of interest, allowing Willis to stay on the case if the special prosecutor stepped down. That decision is currently being reviewed by the Georgia State Court of Appeals. That makes it unlikely the case against Trump and more than a dozen others for allegedly attempting to overturn the 2020 results in that state will be heard before this election day.
President Biden spent Tuesday condemning Donald Trump for sharing a video on his social media network that seemingly uses Nazi language. That video has since been deleted from his account. And it all comes as both presumptive candidates continue to fight for the veteran vote ahead of the November elections. NBC News chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the details.
President Biden is touting his commitment to those who served, announcing more than 1 million health care claims approved as part of the bipartisan PACT Act he signed to expand benefits for veterans exposed to toxic chemicals.
Veterans, you are the solid steel spine of our nation.
The camouflage-colored appeals have become familiar for both President Biden and former President Trump, who's repeatedly slammed the Biden administration's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan.
He failed on every single thing, including Afghanistan.
Mr. Trump has won the military vote twice, but that support has eroded. Gulf War veteran Jeff Zamoyda says President Biden is a more unifying commander-in-chief.
Joe Biden is the person that I identify with more clearly as a candidate.
Because
of his staunch commitment to bipartisanship.
Vietnam War veteran Lou Chipola argues President Biden is leading the military in the wrong direction.
Downhill, they brought in the woke, it'll kill the military.
Meantime, the former president is facing fierce criticism for this video shared on Mr. Trump's social media accounts.
What happens after Donald Trump wins?
The 30-second clip uses a term associated with Germany's Nazi government, referring to the creation of a unified Reich, among fictionalized newspaper headlines covering a Trump victory in November. The Trump campaign telling NBC News the video was created by a random account and reposted by a staffer who they say did not see the word. The posts were removed.
A unified Reich? That's Hitler's language. That's not America's.
The latest example of President Biden trying to seize on any Trump misstep, looking to warn voters about the dangers, as he views it, of a second Trump term. Back to you.
All right, Peter Alexander, thank you. A Singapore Airlines flight was forced to make an emergency landing in Thailand yesterday after hitting extreme turbulence. Dozens of people on board suffered serious injuries. One passenger died. British media is now identifying the victim. 73-year-old Jeff Kitchen suffered a suspected heart attack when the plane hit a patch of sudden severe weather and began plummeting to the ground. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the story.
On the tarmac in Bangkok, a mass casualty response to a terrifying high-altitude flight. Singapore Airlines says at least 30 injured, some critically. A local hospital says it's treating 71 passengers. One person died. The airport general manager says a 73-year-old British man apparently suffered a heart attack. It happened when the Boeing 777 flying from London to Singapore hit sudden turbulence on the edge of a powerful storm over Thailand. Flight Radar 24 data shows the plane bucking like a bronco at 37,000 feet, climbing and falling. Then a controlled emergency descent to 31,000 feet. Photos from inside the cabin show the damage and chaos. Overhead panels ripped off, food and bottles scattered on the floor, bloodstains on the ceiling. Multiple victims evacuated on backboards.
It was incredibly scary experience. Seeing the people in the flights we had years ago.
Atmospheric researchers report clear air turbulence has only gotten worse with climate change.
So we know that the amount of wind shear in the jet stream is now 15% stronger than it was when satellites first began observing it in the 1970s.
Heat makes the jet stream more volatile and difficult to predict.
Pilots do rely on other pilots to report turbulence that they encounter.
It happens every day, 5,500 times a year. 7 were injured in March of 2023 when a Lufthansa flight hit severe turbulence over Tennessee. In December 22, 3 dozen injured on a Hawaiian Air flight.
Broken backs, broken skulls, brain injuries, a severed limb. And these are very serious conditions.
This incident really underscores why you need to always wear your seatbelt on a plane, and infants should be strapped into a car seat on a plane. The NTSB is sending a team to investigate. 4 Americans were on board this flight. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. Let's bring in former accident investigator and aviation specialist expert Jeff Gazzetti. Jeff, good to have you with us. All right, so these images from this flight are certainly scary. A Bangkok hospital says 20 people from this flight are in intensive care. Of course, 1 person has died. How dangerous can sudden turbulence be, and what actually causes turbulence that's this severe?
Good morning. Well, so atmospheric changes causes turbulence. Turbulence is classified in 4 levels: light, moderate, severe, and extreme. And this was extreme, which means the pilot loses control of the airplane and there's potentially structural damage. It's not that common that airliners puncture extreme turbulence. It usually occurs near a lot of convective activity, a lot of updrafts and downdrafts from powerful thunderstorms. And the best way, Joe, to prevent injuries is to be strapped into your seat.
Yeah, I always am strapped into my seat and make sure my kids are too. My sister-in-law is a flight attendant and has seen a lot of these incidents. Reuters reports one passenger who claimed to have been inside the plane said some people's heads slammed into the ceiling and actually punctured the overhead lights. Even if you're strapped in, this can still be a dangerous situation.
It can be dangerous, but I would guess that those people who were thrown up into the headboards were not strapped in. It's just almost impossible for turbulence to rip apart an airplane or rip apart your seatbelt. So those that were physically injured were likely not strapped into their seats. And the one fatality, the 73-year-old man, I'm not, it's not sure whether he was strapped in or not. He had a heart attack. It's a very scary situation, whether or not you're physically damaged, and perhaps that's what triggered the heart attack.
Tom Costello mentioned in his report climate change may be partially responsible for the increase in air turbulence during flights. A statement from Singapore Airlines said the plane encountered sudden extreme turbulence over southern Myanmar. Weather data showed multiple rapidly developing storms. Is there anything more plane manufacturers can do to further safeguard against severe weather, or do you think they're doing everything they can right now?
I think they're doing everything they can right now. These airplanes are built incredibly tough. They have safety factors in them where the structure is not going to be harmed. The wings are going to stay on. It's really just getting people, well, 2 things. One, you should be strapped in anytime you are seated. And secondly, there could be new technologies to better alert pilots to turbulence. So avoiding turbulence is the #1 thing to do, and then staying strapped in your seat is the #2 thing.
Jeff Gazzetti, good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.